According to unpopular belief, in the fall of 1621, the Wampanoag people and Plymouth colonists shared a harvest feast, which many refer to as the first Thanksgiving. Or the true origin of the national holiday could be traced back to Abraham Lincoln. In 1863, during the Civil War, Lincoln called for the country to dedicate the last Thursday in November as a day of Thanksgiving. Hello, I'm Liz Chang.
And I am Patricia Alvarado Núñez, co-executive producer with Liz of Stories from the Stage for GBH and World Channel. You know, Liz, back in Panama, we didn't have Thanksgiving. When I came to the U.S., I learned to appreciate how Thanksgiving revolves around family, delicious food, and serious overeating. But kidding aside, I really love the idea of a day of giving thanks with family and friends.
Thanksgiving turns out to be my son's favorite holiday because there's such a low bar for doing it well. Number 1, wear pants with a loose waistband. Eat more than humanly possible, and then watch a little football while pretending to nap. As you know, Patricia, this is the one day of the year I cook, which means something catches on fire, a platter gets dropped on the floor, or food is left in the microwave, found days later. Upon discovery of this mistake, my husband would say, this dish didn't start out green. And you must know, my son loves to see me rush around in a panic, looking for my computerized checklist. He finds it amusing that someone who doesn't eat meat has the nerve to cook a turkey.
Wow, Liz, sounds like you have many, many great stories you could share today.
Plenty. But today, we're concentrating on the disasters and the pull from the fire triumphs of our storytellers.
Liz, you will love this one. Daughter Melanée Addison tests her entry into adulthood with the ultimate challenge, roasting the Thanksgiving turkey.
Been there, done that. During a Thanksgiving celebration, Matthew Dix gathers his courage to stand up to his girlfriend's tough-as-nails dad.
Heather Rodman honors her father and a family tradition by running a road race on Thanksgiving Day, dressed as Santa's favorite reindeer, Rudolph.
And Lani Peterson's cooking mistake becomes a favorite every Thanksgiving. Ooh, I wish that any of my mistakes would become a favorite of anybody's.
Our host, Wes Hazard, with 4 unforgettable Thanksgiving stories.
My name is Melanée Addison. I'm originally from New York City, from the Bronx. I'm a recently published author, and I also am really big in herbalism and wellness, so that's another passion of mine. And of course, I love telling stories.
And you've also journaled for 30 years, and I'm just really interested, how did that become such a big part of your life?
Well, I think it was making up for lost time. I always had things that I wanted to say, but had a fear of keeping a journal because I was like, oh, I don't want anyone to see it, don't want anything to happen, and someone find out my innermost thoughts. But at the time that I really did start to pick up a journal, it became such a place of self-discovery for me. It opened up myself to myself, you know, and that's just a very different perspective when you're able to read your thoughts on a daily basis.
Is this your first time telling a story on stage?
My own story. I've been in theater before, so I've done monologues and told other people's stories, but this is my first time telling a personal story in front of people.
And what have you learned while crafting the story that you're about to share with us tonight?
It's very much like journaling. I'm able to tell a story that I was experiencing at one point real time, but definitely from a different vantage point. I can go back and feel the experiences and relive them. But now I have this different perspective that I'm looking at it from and seeing things from. And even that speaks to different things that I might be, you know, looking for answers in my life in a different way. So storytelling is just... it's just a window of discovery to help you understand yourself and the world around you at whatever stage you happen to find yourself in. This is a sweet victory after a long, hard-fought battle. You see, I'm the youngest of 4 children by 10 years, otherwise known as whoops, but more commonly referred to as the baby of the family. And after about 30 straight years of doing so, about the time I hit puberty, it was becoming really obvious to me that my mother was quickly tiring of this child-raising gig. And throughout my adolescence, I would often hear the familiar soundbite. I can't wait until you get grown and get a place of your own. Then you'll know what it feels like. Now, granted, she would often be saying this while picking up my items carelessly strewn about the house, or opening up the refrigerator to find the milk and juice containers empty. But most definitely every time there was an unexpected spike in our phone bill. Nevertheless, in my mind, the expectation was set. As my siblings had all left the house at 18 to either join the service or get married, at 18, I too would be on my own. And so when that time arrived, I had gotten a decent job, built up some savings, and approached my mother with an ad for an apartment. Now, to my surprise, she completely does an about-face and tries to convince me that I really am not just quite ready to face the world on my own. Well, not only is this a challenge to my young adult ego, but she had been unwittingly sowing these seeds of independence in me for so long that they had already sprouted. And I was determined to continue my quest for freedom, my own promised land, a place where I no longer had to hear how money didn't grow on trees, or hide in the closet late at night to have secret phone conversations with my boyfriend. But best of all, with my own place, I could come and go as I pleased, no curfew. So I would find these adorable apartments and excitedly bring my mother to see them, only to have her go at it with these landlords, slumlords she would call them, with a slew of complaints, like for instance, the lone hairline crack in the misaligned tile behind the bathroom door, or the insufficient water pressure, and let's not forget the mysterious drafts due to lack of insulation that no one else felt. And needless to say, my mother and I would be promptly sent on our way with my fully returned deposit. But after a while, I began to catch on. And the last place I showed her was with a signed lease already in hand. So now I'm on my own, and I am determined to prove to my mother that I truly am a competent and capable adult. So that year, I insist on making the Thanksgiving turkey. Now, in our family, Thanksgiving is my mother's full domain, and God forbid anybody try to encroach upon that territory. But after a few moments of hesitation, to my surprise, she agreed, and then proceeded to bombard me with phone calls, asking, do I know the right size turkey to get? Am I using all the correct spices and seasonings? Am I allowing enough time for the turkey to thaw before cooking? And finally, frustrated, I say to her, Mom, enough. I'm an adult now. I'm not a child. I know how to make a turkey. I mean, I'd spent years watching her make the Thanksgiving turkey, and even on some occasions, unwillingly recruited to help. So I knew what I was doing. And as expected, when I pulled my turkey from the oven, it had a beautiful golden brown skin that would rival my mother's. And so on Thanksgiving Day, I walk into her apartment, proudly, regally cradling my beautiful creation as if a newborn, and purposely ignoring all the nervous glances being cast in my direction. I, with great fanfare, ceremoniously placed my beautiful bird in the center of the table. So now we're all gathered around the table, and after grace, my brother proceeds to carve the turkey. And as I proudly look on as he delves the knife deep into my masterpiece, red bloody juices start to flow. And everyone stares, stunned, as their Thanksgiving feast is now an array of sides and some cornbread. And as I'm watching the bloody juices pool into the bottom of the platter, I can't help but feel betrayed by my bird, my beautiful bird that I spent hours massaging, caressing, cajoling with, with visions of Thanksgiving victory. I can't even bear to look at my mother, and so instead I just fixate on the ever-growing pool of blood. Eventually, my mother gets up and she goes into the kitchen, and she returns back into the dining area with a beautiful brown bird of her own. Like, where did she get this? Like, out of nowhere. And despite me, everyone breaks out in loud cheers and applause. And as I'm sitting there, quietly watching my undone bloody bird being unceremoniously ousted from its place of honor, two things hit me. Number one, my mother's words from adolescence echo back to me. And for the first time, I think I really do know what it feels like. But secondly, and most importantly, I am humbled by the very adult realization that sometimes independence means knowing how and when to be dependent. Thank you.
My name is Matthew Dix. I live in Hartford, Connecticut. I have a lot of jobs. I'm an elementary school teacher by day. I'm an author. I publish novels and nonfiction, and I'm a columnist. And I tell stories, and I teach storytelling in Connecticut, but really all over the world.
What's the hardest part of storytelling for you?
For me, it's always the beginning of the story. I build my stories by starting with a moment that I want to share with people, and it's always the end. It's what I call a 5-second moment. It's a moment of transformation of some kind, and that's sort of what my story is always leading to. But finding those right words to grab people instantly and to deliver them perfectly is really the greatest challenge for me. So I fight for great first lines, and sometimes I give up. Sometimes I'll say, I can't find the right words, I'll move on to another story, and 2 years later, the first few lines will hit me, and then I will have like the key to unlock that story. So that's a tricky thing for me, is finding those first lines. I'm sitting at the dining room table in my girlfriend's parents' home. I'm eating a cookie. My girlfriend Lisa is beside me and she's talking, but I don't hear a word that she says. I'm staring at the front door. I'm waiting. I'm waiting for it to open and for her father to come home. I'm a 19-year-old boy waiting to meet my girlfriend's father for the very first time. And I am terrified. And then the door opens. And the man walks in, and I stand, and we meet in the middle, and I reach my hand out to shake his, and as his hand wraps over mine, I can feel the roughness of his skin. I can feel the calluses. I can see the dirt and the grime under his fingernails. It's like shaking hands with a Brillo pad. These are hands that build and repair. This is a man who can fix plumbing. He's a guy who can change his own oil. He's the type of guy who can take a tree down and then put it back up if necessary. And as I'm shaking his hand, I realize I'm in a lot of trouble because my hands are nothing like his. I have the hands of a boy who plays Miss Pac-Man at the arcade on Friday nights. I have hands that roll 20-sided dice onto card tables in basements while playing Dungeons and Dragons. These are hands that play the flute. These are not hands that build and repair. These are hands that purchase and replace. And as I shake his hand, I know I'm in trouble because I've been in this situation before. Before I loved Lisa, I loved Laura, my high school sweetheart. Laura's father's name was Butch, and he was the dictionary definition of that word. I met him in his driveway one day next to his dump truck, his bucket truck, and what I would later learn was a stump grinder. Shaking Butch's hand was like putting your hand into a bag of broken glass. I asked Butch what he did for a living, and he said, whatever needs to be done. I am not a man who does whatever needs to be done. I hire people to do what needs to be done. And so as I'm shaking Lisa's father's hand now, I know I'm in trouble because the reason Laura and I aren't together anymore is because even though she loved me, she respected her father more than any woman I have ever met in my life, and I was never going to match what he was. And now I am worried that I'm not going to match what this man is either. And I'm already starting out behind. Lisa's father is a car guy, and 6 months ago, I owned a 1976 Chevy Malibu with a 357 V8. I don't know what those numbers mean, except I know that car guys like those numbers. But I have sold that car, and I am now driving a powder blue Toyota Tercel. He looks at my car, and I swear he wants to punch me in the face. He asks me where I live, and I tell him in Attleboro with some of my friends, but I can never take him to my home because it is the home of boys. The walls are plastered with Bart Simpson posters. I've got 2 rabbits that run around my house like cats. They use the litter box and eat out of bowls. We got them because we thought we would get girls, which we actually kind of do. But he can't see this. And we have 20 hamsters that are spread out in cages all over the house with tubes connecting all over. It's like steampunk Hamsterville. Wherever you're standing, there is a hamster over your head. I cannot bring this man into this world of boys. And I am a McDonald's manager, and I know it's the hardest job I will ever do in my life, but to him, I know I am flipping burgers. It is going to be a hard win in this case, but I've got a plan. I'm going to win this guy over. He's Portuguese. So I decide I'm going to learn everything about Portugal, which in 1991 is a very big deal. Because to learn something in 91, you have to go to a brick building during office hours. You have to slide open a card and find that card and use it to find a book. And none of those books have Control F. You have to read the whole damn book to find the one fact that you are looking for to impress your girlfriend's father. It is a commitment that I stick to. And then my rabbits become a problem because they're chewing through the cords. They've knocked out our television and one of our lamps. My buddies and I decide we need to get rid of the rabbits. And one day I'm at Lisa's house and I see that her father has a hutch full of rabbits. And so I say, I've got a problem with my rabbits, sir. Would you like my rabbits? And he says, yes. And I swear as I pass my rabbits over to him, it's like we get closer. Like we don't become friends, but we become friendly. And then he invites me to Thanksgiving dinner. And this is a big deal for me because for the past 2 years, I have not had a Thanksgiving. My Thanksgivings are the Dallas Cowboys and Domino's and despair. And so having an actual Thanksgiving with real food and a family is a big deal for me. And so I go to their house and I sit at that dining room table. I sit right beside him. It's like having the father I never had. And there is turkey, and there are breads, and there's stuffings, and there's stews, and I feel like a member of the family. I have done it. And then he turns to me and he says, what do you think of my stew? And I say, I love it. And he says, you should. It's your rabbit. And I can't believe it. I turn to Lisa to see if she's in on this, and she's just as appalled as I am. And so I turn back to this man, and he is smiling. He thinks it's funny that he has just fed me my pet rabbit. We stare at each other for what is probably 3 seconds, but feels like 3 years. There is silence at the table. And then I stand up, and for the first time in my life, I speak to a man like a man. I tell him what a terrible thing he has done. I swear at him at his dining room table. I tell him exactly what is in my heart, and then I turn and I leave his house. My hands are just as soft as when I was 19 years old. I cannot change oil. I cannot fix a single thing in my house. I cannot assemble a single one of my children's toys. But that was the moment a 19-year-old boy stood up and became a 19-year-old man. And for the first time in his life, he told another man exactly how he felt. Thank you.
What an unexpected twist. A surprise moment is one of the most precious things a storyteller can give us. Please help us find more stories like these by donating at give.worldchannel.org/stories.
After all, Stories from the Stage is a gift that keeps on giving. Coming up next, Wes Hazard and storyteller Heather Rodman.
My name's Heather Rodman, and I live in Arlington, Massachusetts. I've been an educator for 25 years, and I currently work at Lesley University in the Graduate School of Education.
How did you come to storytelling? What was that journey like for you?
A good friend of mine kept telling me that I was a storyteller, and she brought me, actually, to an episode of Stories from the Stage. And I sat in the audience that night, and I said, yeah, I want to do this.
Would you be able to tell me a little bit about what you have discovered through storytelling?
I think storytelling has helped me find myself. Quite honestly, it's been a journey into self. When you start discovering these stories and you start telling them, you find out more and more about your own journey. I've struggled with post-traumatic stress syndrome for over 20 years, and storytelling has actually started to help me recover. And that's the biggest piece. When you share your stories and you share your humanity, you learn about yourself, and then you can share that with others. It's 9:30 Thanksgiving morning, 0 degrees, with an estimated wind chill factor of -17. I'm walking to the start line of the 82nd Manchester Road Race. For this historic Connecticut race, runners usually dress up, and my family never says no to a costume. So this year, my sister-in-law and nephew are Santas, my niece is an elf, and I'm Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Standing in the start chute, waiting for the race to begin, huddled together like a family of penguins, I'm seriously contemplating why I'm out here today. 6 years ago, I was sitting in front of a warm fire, drinking a cup of coffee, waiting for the Macy's Day Parade to start, and eating a piece of my mom's homemade pumpkin pie with whipped cream on top for breakfast with my dad. This was a tradition he started when my brother and I were younger, proclaiming one Thanksgiving that there was no need to save the best part about Thanksgiving until last. 9 days after Thanksgiving 6 years ago, my father died of a massive heart attack, and I've been running from Thanksgiving ever since. The real reason I'm out here is because I can't imagine being home on Thanksgiving morning without my dad. Out of the 12,000 runners this year, I'm number 10,068. I hadn't given this number much thought until the night before when my mom asked, "So what does the number 8 mean to you?" And I said, "I don't know." "Flip it sideways? And it's an infinity sign? Why?" She said, "Because you have your dad's birthday and a number 8 as your running number this year." I must have looked confused because she continued to explain. 10,068. 10, 06, 8. October 6th with an 8. And there it was, my dad, forever on Thanksgiving morning. As the race begins, I'm already thinking about the second mile because it's one hill. On a good year, this climb's been difficult. Today, I'm thinking Everest. As I enter that second mile, my bib number starts to feel like 195 pounds as I carry memories of my dad up that hill with me, one step at a time. About halfway up, I start cursing. This is a good sign. My dad would be proud. He had found it his duty as my father to teach me how to curse before going to kindergarten as a playground survival skill. 3/4 of the way up, I have the strongest memory. I'm 5 or 6, and we're sitting on the porch in our home in Pennsylvania, and we're riding out a storm together because my father knows that thunder scares me. At the top of the hill, my Santa Claus sister-in-law finds me, and I'm no longer alone with my memories. We start running together, and we take the downhill, and a runner's high kicks in. After taking inventory of all of our body parts that we can no longer feel, we start to question why we're out here today. And my sister-in-law shares how much my brother really appreciates the fact that we run this race. Because as a police officer in town, he's mandated to work this race. And for years, he spent Thanksgiving alone. And now, his family runs the race, and he looks forward to this day because we're all together on Thanksgiving morning. At the bottom of the hill, we hit the flats, the land that I call no man's land, because the race flattens out and a runner's high fades, and you start to feel like you're running through sludge, and there's 2 miles left to go. We take a turn, and the full force of a -17-degree wind chill factor hits us face on and throws us backwards. I duck my head down and start to cry. If there were ever a time to abandon this race, it would be now. Just then, my Santa sister-in-law says, "Am I hallucinating, or are those guys naked?" I look up and see 3 20-something athletic guys who run this race every year in loincloths. Please tell me They're wearing nude-colored bodysuits, she says. No, those aren't bodysuits. I am, however, really surprised that they did not take frostbite of the extremities into consideration this year. My sister-in-law says, seriously, I need a closer look. So we pick up our pace, and it takes us into the backstretch. And it's here that I see things my father would have loved. Pittsburgh Steelers fans, 3 guys dressed up as the Hanson brothers from the iconic hockey movie Slapshot, and a person dressed in a huge inflatable turkey costume. And I think of every Macy's Day Parade I ever watched with my father. These images take me to the finish line, where my sister and I hug, cry, laugh, and put out great wishes for a warmer run next year. Back in the parking lot, a crowd has gathered around our cars because my mom, brother, nephew, niece are passing out pieces of pumpkin pie with whipped cream on top. And as my mom passes me my piece of pie, I give thanks to my father for running with me today, reminding me what Thanksgiving is all about, and being my dad forever.
My name's Lani Peterson. I'm in the Boston area. I'm actually trained as a psychologist, and I've been working with stories for over 20 years in an applied storytelling way. So in addition to storytelling, I actually do a lot of story listening and story empowerment. So I work with people from CEOs and organizations looking at storytelling as a leadership skill. I also work with people whose voices are marginalized. So I'm in homeless shelters. I work with formerly incarcerated as well as in prisons.
Well, that is an extremely important mission. What do you feel is the common thread in storytelling that allows it to be effective and important and valuable for so many different groups?
As human beings, our brains are wired for stories. I'm sure you've heard that they talk about that a lot now. But what that means is that we are making meaning of the experiences that we have, and through that, defining ourselves, creating ourselves. Our identity is formed through the stories that we have lived and that we hold within how we talk about ourselves. So essentially, in any moment, we are defining how we hold and know ourselves and how we want others to see us. I think we all have a need to be known and to be seen, to be valued in that, and that is part of our basic humanness, whether you are feeling like you're at the top of the world or at the bottom of the world. When I was a kid, my mother did holidays up big. And if you'd asked me when I was little what my favorite holiday was, I probably would have said Christmas. But as I got older, I really began to appreciate Thanksgiving. Our family would come from all over, not only the state, but New England. Cousins, uncles that we hadn't seen all year long would gather. We would have to put every leaf in the dining room table and then every cardboard table around, multiple tablecloths to fit 25 chairs around the table. And then about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the ancient great uncles would come in the door, barely walking in with their canes. My grandfather had emigrated to this country from Sweden with his 5 brothers. All Petersons at immigration changed their name to Pete Peterson. So I had 5 Uncle Petes and Grandpa Pete all there around the table with their straggly beards. And as the wine got poured and the stories just filled the room, I thought, Thanksgiving. Now, my mom would start preparing for this massive group of people at least 2, maybe 3 days beforehand. And in that she had 4 small children, she would put us to work because we desperately wanted to help. She became an expert at creating craft projects to keep us busy while she made the 5 pies. She was very creative. We would do customized place cards and placemats. We would make pilgrim hats for all the ancient uncles to wear during dinner. We had papier-mâché cornucopias. We had turkey salad, which was actually a half of a pear with sliced carrots to make the turkey's tail, a piece of celery for the long neck, and a pecan on top, and you could almost hear them gobble when they were there on the table. Meanwhile, she was busy peeling all the squash and the potatoes heaped with butter and the little pearl onions and the peas and the cranberry bread and the pumpkin bread, and we were just busy making our crafts. And then, of course, the turkey. Now, she had thought that in order to have a very moist turkey, it needed to cook long and slow. So she would put it in the night before at 200 degrees, but it had to be basted every 2 hours, which meant she got up at midnight, 2, 4, and 6 before feeding 25 people in order to baste this turkey. Now, you would have thought that this would be the centerpiece of Thanksgiving, but I am here to tell you, no. The most important part of Thanksgiving, you probably know, it's the stuffing. Now, the stuffing needs to be made very carefully. It's not just breadcrumbs and turkey juice. There's the sausage, but then the secret ingredients, apples, nuts, apricots, and the most secret ingredient of all, bourbon. Just the right amount of bourbon. Now, people love my mother's stuffing so much that to make just that amount that fit inside the turkey would never have done it. So she, somewhere early in her marriage, went out and bought a really big, beautiful clay stuffing bowl. It only came out once a year at Thanksgiving, and as she pulled it out of the basement, it almost had that smell of Thanksgiving just to get us salivating before things happened. I loved this bowl so much that when she went around and asked each of the kids as she was older what we wanted from the family, all I wanted was the stuffing bowl. But what I didn't realize is that if you got the stuffing bowl, you also got Thanksgiving. So there I was several years later with 4 little children of my own, and I realized how brilliant my mother was to have crafts, because all that help makes a very long day. We did the placemats, the place cards, and then I got the brilliant idea, tie-dyed t-shirts. I bought each of my 4 kids 5 white t-shirts, 1,000 rubber bands, so they each had 250 that they had to wrap around 5 t-shirts. In addition, I got 12 boxes of Rit Dye Royal Purple number 12, and when all those shirts were done at the end of the day, we filled the sink with boiling water and as many boxes as we could put in, and let them soak. However, all those shirts didn't fit in the sink. And I thought, how are we going to get all these shirts done? And then I remembered the big clay stuffing bowl. In the shirts went, in the boiling water, and another 6 boxes of Rit Dye Royal Purple number 12 to sit for hours. Oh, I didn't know. When all was said and done and put away, I stayed up late that night and made the stuffing and put it in the fridge. And in the morning, I had 4 children with purple hands in their purple shirts and purple stuffing. Have you ever seen a purple apricot? It is not pretty. But I had to serve it because if you don't have stuffing, it's not Thanksgiving. But then, of course, I'm afraid I'm going to kill them. So have you ever noticed on Thanksgiving Day at the top of the newspaper there's a poison control hotline? Did you ever wonder what that's for? I always did. But thank God it's there. I called poison control. And when they stopped laughing at me, they had to do some research because they let me know they had never been asked this question before. They let me know, you won't kill anybody. It might not taste great. I can handle that. I've got bourbon. But go ahead and serve it. So what we realized was that in order to pass this off, what we needed, in fact, was a really good story. So we sat down and we thought about it, and of course, it all made sense. Traditional Thanksgiving, Pilgrims, Native Americans, grapes. Lots and lots of grapes added to the stuffing to give it that purple tint and hue. This was the most traditional Thanksgiving, in fact, we've ever had. And so, as the great uncles and aunts and cousins came in the door that Thanksgiving, there were my 4 beautiful children with their purple hands, in their purple tie-dye t-shirts with one for every guest. And as we served our purple stuffing, we were sure nobody had a clue. Except that next year when my great aunt said, "Are you going to serve that purple stuffing again?" And then I thought, well, you never know. Come and find out, because at the holidays, there's always a surprise.
I think Lani's purple stuffing won the ultimate contest in Thanksgiving mishaps.
Well, perhaps, but I think setting the top of the stove on fire could place me as a close second. I always say that if no one ends up in the hospital, Thanksgiving dinner is a wonderful success.
During this season of giving, please consider supporting Stories from the Stage and the art of storytelling with a donation at give.worldchannel.org/stories.
And we give thanks to all of you for supporting great storytelling by listening and giving what you can to Stories from the Stage. Until next time.